Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. These words would become Napoleon Hill's guiding principle. But before he could teach them to the world, he had to discover their truth through his own painful journey from self-doubt to becoming the best version of himself. His transformation from a rebellious mountain boy to the world's greatest success philosopher reveals the secret that changed everything. Napoleon Hill was born in 1883 in a one-room log cabin in the mountains of Virginia, where poverty wasn't just a temporary setback, it was a way of life. His family barely scraped by, and young Napoleon often wondered if he was destined to remain trapped in the same cycle of limitation that had claimed his ancestors for generations. The boy who would one day teach millions about believing in themselves initially struggled to believe in his own potential. After his mother died when he was 10, Napoleon became known as the most troublesome child in Wise County. He was angry, rebellious, and convinced that life had dealt him an unfair hand. His teachers labeled him a problem child, his neighbors whispered that he would never amount to anything, and deep inside, Napoleon began to believe them. The voice of self-doubt echoed in his mind, "You're just a poor mountain boy. Who do you think you were to dream of something bigger?" When his father remarried, Napoleon's stepmother saw something in him that others had missed. Instead of trying to break his rebellious spirit, she channeled it into writing. She convinced his father to buy Napoleon a typewriter instead of the rifle he wanted for his 13th birthday. "Napoleon," she said, "you have fire in you. The question is whether you'll use it to destroy or to create." That typewriter became the first tool in Napoleon's transformation, but the real journey began years later when he was working as a struggling young journalist. At 25, he was assigned to interview Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate who had built one of America's greatest fortunes. As Napoleon rode the train to Carnegie's mansion, the familiar voice of self-doubt whispered, "What makes you think you belong in the same room as one of the world's most successful men?" Walking into Carnegie's opulent office, Napoleon felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the man before him. Here was someone who had achieved everything Napoleon dreamed of while he could barely afford his train ticket. But something remarkable happened during that 3-hour interview. As Carnegie spoke about his journey from a poor Scottish immigrant to America's richest man, Napoleon realized that the difference wasn't in their backgrounds, it was in their beliefs about what was possible. Carnegie leaned forward and said something that would change Napoleon's life forever. "Young man, I believe there's a philosophy of success that could help millions of people. Would you be willing to spend 20 years documenting it? I'll introduce you to the most successful people in America, but you'll receive no payment for this work. You must believe in this mission enough to sustain yourself while you complete it." Napoleon had 60 seconds to decide. Every logical voice in his head screamed that this was madness. He had no savings, no guarantees, and no safety net. But in that moment, Napoleon made a choice that would define his entire future. He chose to believe in himself and his mission. "Yes, Mr. Carnegie, I accept." With that decision, Napoleon began applying the first principle that would later make him famous: definiteness of purpose. He didn't just want to be successful, he had committed to a specific, measurable goal with a clear deadline. This wasn't a vague wish. It was a definite major purpose that would guide every decision for the next 2 decades. The early years tested Napoleon's newfound belief in himself more severely than poverty ever had. As he interviewed successful individuals from Thomas Edison to Henry Ford, he was learning the secrets of achievement while living in near poverty himself. There were months when he couldn't afford decent meals, times when creditors threatened to take his few possessions, and moments when even his closest friends questioned his sanity. The lowest point came 7 years into his research. Napoleon sat in his sparse apartment, surrounded by rejection letters from publishers who thought his ideas were too optimistic for the harsh realities of the business world. The voice of self-doubt, quiet for years, roared back to life, "You're a failure. You've wasted the best years of your life chasing an impossible dream. You're still that poor mountain boy pretending to be something you're not." But Napoleon had learned something crucial during his interviews with great achievers. Every single one of them had faced moments exactly like this, moments when they had to choose between their belief in themselves and the easier path of giving up. He remembered what Thomas Edison had told him: "Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time." Napoleon made a conscious decision to apply the principle of autosuggestion that he had been studying. Instead of allowing negative thoughts to dominate his mind, he began feeding his subconscious mind with positive affirmations about his mission and his ability to complete it. Every morning, he would look in the mirror and declare, I am destined to help millions of people achieve success. This temporary setback is preparing me for my ultimate breakthrough. He also deepened his application of the principle of persistence. Napoleon realized that his current struggles weren't signs of failure, they were the price of admission to greatness. Every successful person he had interviewed had paid this price. The difference between those who achieved greatness and those who remained mediocre wasn't the absence of struggle, but the response to it. Napoleon began to see his research differently. Instead of viewing himself as a struggling writer trying to document other people's success, he started seeing himself as someone who was becoming successful through the very act of applying these principles. He wasn't just studying success, he was living it, one persistent day at a time. The transformation accelerated when Napoleon began applying the principle of organized thinking. He stopped randomly collecting information and started systematically organizing his research into clear, teachable principles. He realized that his 20 years of study had given him something no one else possessed, a comprehensive understanding of the mental and spiritual laws that govern achievement. As Napoleon refined his philosophy, something remarkable began happening. Publishers who had previously rejected his work started expressing interest. Speaking opportunities appeared. People began seeking his advice. Napoleon realized that he had become the type of person who naturally attracted success, not because he was trying harder, but because he had fundamentally changed who he was. The breakthrough moment came when Think and Grow Rich was published in 1937. The book became an immediate bestseller, but more importantly, letters poured in from readers whose lives had been transformed by applying Napoleon's principles. A struggling salesman in Chicago had used the book's teachings to become the top performer in his company. A widow in California had built a successful business using the principles of definiteness of purpose and persistence. Napoleon realized that he had achieved something greater than personal success. He had become the best version of himself by helping others become the best versions of themselves. The poor mountain boy who had once doubted his own worth had become one of the most influential teachers in human history. But Napoleon's secret wasn't complicated. He had discovered that becoming the best isn't about competing with others, it's about consistently growing into the person you're capable of becoming. Every day, he had made the choice to believe in his mission a little more, to persist a little longer, and to grow a little stronger. Years later, as Napoleon reflected on his journey from self-doubt to self-mastery, he understood that the real secret to being the best was surprisingly simple. It wasn't about being born with special talents or having perfect circumstances. It was about making a definite decision about who you wanted to become and then persistently taking action to become that person, regardless of temporary setbacks or external circumstances. Napoleon had proven that anyone could achieve greatness by applying the right principles consistently over time. He had transformed from a rebellious boy who doubted his worth into a man who helped millions of others discover their own worth. His life became living proof that the only limits that matter are the ones we accept in our own minds. The secret to being the best, Napoleon discovered, wasn't about reaching some distant destination called success. It was about the daily choice to believe in yourself, to persist through challenges, and to keep growing into the person you're meant to become. Success wasn't something that happened to him, it was something he became through the progressive realization of his worthy ideal. You don't have to be the best to start, but you do have to start to be the best.